A grand wooden pavilion burns to the ground. In the ashes, the 5 Pandawa brothers and their mother are officially declared dead. With his rivals out of the way, Raden Suyudana is immediately sworn in as crown prince. The Kurawa faction exploits the tragedy to lock down the Hastina throne. Looking at the classical Javanese texts recording this timeline, the event is cemented as the official history. The fire is written off as a tragic accident. Assassinating your rivals and controlling the records will win you the capital city, but building a lasting empire requires grassroots legitimacy, a foundation the new rulers lack entirely. Back in court, Pati Sankuni spins a careful lie. He claims the victims were trapped in their sleep, pointing to his own self-inflicted burn marks as proof he tried to save them. Only one noble points out the glaring inconsistencies in the story. Yamawidora speaks up, but he is swiftly outmaneuvered by the court and exiled to the remote province of Pagambakan. The Hastina court operates on the assumption that the ashes belong to the Pandawas. But deep beneath the earth, the 5 brothers and their mother survived, guided through a hidden escape tunnel by a sympathetic Naga deity. The capital's new regime builds its stability by silencing critics. Meanwhile, the officially dead princes emerge into the wilderness. Stripped of their titles and wealth, they are forced to construct an entirely different type of political power from scratch. To evade Hastina's spies, the brothers shed their royal armor. They adopt the rough robes of the Brahmana, wandering priests, letting their beards grow out to mask their noble features. Their exile leads them to a rural region called Ekacakra. Back in the capital, the Kurawas feast to celebrate their new titles, while the displaced princes quietly starve, begging the locals for scraps of rice. But Ekacakra has its own problems. The region is controlled by Prabu Baka, a giant king who developed a taste for human flesh. Every week, the villages are forced to provide a human sacrifice, slathered in a traditional coconut spice paste known as Bothok. This chart shows exactly why the extraction system is mathematically unsustainable. Along with a human life, the king demands a constant supply of livestock and mountain-sized portions of food flowing directly into his palace, rapidly depleting the village's population and resources. When a ruling power consumes its own citizens to sustain itself, it eventually leaves the population with nothing left to lose. It creates the exact conditions necessary for a violent uprising. The Pandavas are currently taking shelter with a poor local priest named Resi Ijrapa. One night, they hear crying from the next room. It is his family's turn to send a member to the king's dining table. Hearing this, the strongest of the brothers, Bima, refuses to stand by. His nature as a kshatriya, the warrior class sworn to protect society, overrides his need to stay hidden. He volunteers to go in their place. The next morning, Bima drives the sacrificial cart toward the palace, but instead of trembling in fear, he simply devours the giant's entire tribute of rice and meat along the way. In Javanese philosophy, this act embodies dharma, or righteous duty. True leadership demands risking your own safety to shield the vulnerable. It is the exact inverse of the Hastina regime, which sacrifices the weak to protect its own elite status. When the cart arrives at the palace, Prabu Baka storms out expecting a feast. Instead, he finds an empty wagon and a disguised prince wiping his mouth. The monster attacks. Bima holds his ground. What follows is an earth-shaking clash of pure physical power, tearing through the ancient forest. Bima catches the giant off guard, lifts his massive frame into the air, and brings him down hard, snapping Prabu Baka's spine cleanly over a rock. The local tyrant is dead. For the exiled brothers, this victory achieves something larger. It proves to the local population that these strangers possess the actual capacity to protect them. Back in the village, the shock wears off, and the disguises finally drop. Resi Ijrapa realizes the wandering priests he took in are actually the supposedly dead princes of Hastina. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the priest drops to his knees. He and the people of Ekacakra swear a blood oath to the Pandawas, promising to serve as their shield and weapons whenever the time comes to reclaim the throne. This animation illustrates the contrasting power structures at play. On the left, Hastina relies on top-down authority, held together by elite deals and violence. On the right, the Pandavas cultivate an expanding network of grassroots loyalties, forged by genuine protection and shared risk. The Kurawas stole a crown by burning down a building and rewriting a ledger. But out in the forgotten forests, by bleeding for the lowest citizens in the kingdom, the Pandavas earned the fierce, unbreakable loyalty that will ultimately win them the greatest war in Javanese mythology.